All right, with that, I'm very pleased to introduce our speaker today, our guest, Mr. Mark Retzloff, who's a true pioneer in organic and natural food industry. And he's done that by founding a series of companies, very successful companies, throughout his career that have helped to reshape and innovate and make better the food industry as we know it. That includes companies like Alfalfa's Markets, Eden Foods, Rainbow Grocery, and perhaps the company you may know best is Horizon Organic Dairy. Mark has also been a part of advising a whole series of other successful companies, including Crocs Footwear. He received his bachelor's degree in environmental studies from the University of Michigan. He also has received the Organic Trade Association's Lifetime Leadership Award for all of his great work that he does in this area. Mark resides in Boulder, Colorado, where he and his wife Terry raised their 3 children, and he was kind enough today to bring us a whole bunch of new, organic, all-natural snow from the slopes of Colorado. So please join me in welcoming Mark Retzloff.
Thank you. Thank you. Hello. What a pleasure to be here and be able to address you today. So, where do we start today? Let's talk a little bit about where I came from here. So this slide kind of talks about some of the organizations that I've worked with. And you can kind of see from that it's a plethora of businesses in the organic and sustainable world, not all in food. Some things I've been involved in organic clothing. I've been involved in Crocs Footwear. Some of these things up here are organizations that I sit on the board of. But all of it revolves around what's important to me in my life. Today, this is the company that I'm currently one of the chairman's, chair one of the boards there, Natural Habitats. Natural Habitats is an organic and sustainable palm oil company. And the reason I put this slide up here is because you're probably all somewhat aware of conflict palm oil that comes from Indonesia and Malaysia, and where there's a lot of rainforests being burned down and habitat being destroyed for orangutans and rhinoceroses, child labor, indentured labor. So it's probably one of the most negative crops from that standpoint that's out there. But palm oil is ubiquitous in our diet and in body care. 85% of all body care has palm oil in it. Almost 50% of all food has some form of palm oil in it. If it wasn't done poorly, if it was done correctly, it's the most sustainable oil that's out there. You get 7 times as much production off of an acre than you get in any other oil that's vegetable oil that's produced. So one of the things that I did was, and I'm not sure if you can read that. Is that kind of fuzzy? I don't know if we can in any way. But anyway, so we started a program called Palm Done Right. And we're transforming the way palm is done in the world and to something that's organic, sustainable, fair for life, fair trade, Rainforest Alliance, so on and so forth, certified. Because it's important for us, from the sustainability standpoint, for us to be using palm oil out there. It's a key ingredient in baby formula. It's what allows baby formula to be close to mother's milk, through the omegas and the fatty fats that are in there and how they're put together. So this is a company that I'm chairman of the board of and been working with, and it's kind of emblematic about what I've done in my career in finding things that are going on out there in the food and agricultural world and bringing about things that are more organic and sustainable. So a good example of that is what we did when I started Horizon Organic Dairy. There was no organic milk in the United States, and I was in retail at that point, and customers were coming in and saying, how come there's no organic milk? You got organic in all the other categories of products. And so I went out, discovered what we could do about that, and started Horizon Organic Dairy. And today, organic milk makes up close to 10% of all milk that's consumed in the United States. Certain parts of the United States, like the Bay Area or Boulder, or probably here in Ann Arbor, that percentage goes up to 15 to 20%. So, and that's been changing the world that's out there and how things are done. So I've been in this industry for, now it looks like 50 years up there now. And so when I first started, you can see where we were and where we are today. We've actually really made a lot of change out there. And so part of this talk is about how we make change and how we have to present ourselves and how we have to do things to bring about that change in a meaningful way. Again, this is another part of how the industry evolved during that time. And for myself, I started by understanding when I was a student here that the role that agriculture played in pollution and degradation in our environment. And I felt that one of the things I could do is see if we could change that. And so I've spent my career changing what we do in food and ag. And have seen, it's taken a half a century, but we've seen a lot of great things happen because of that. Today, we are at 6+, and this is a little bit of old data. It's probably closer to 7.5% of all food is organic. I was the head lobbyist for the industry to get the Organic Food Production Act passed. I don't recommend going into lobbying to anybody out there, but it was interesting for me to see what was going on. What we're seeing today with the millennials and the Gen X or the Gen Z is that the demand for having sustainable, organic, clean, healthy food is a normal thing that young people are looking for, which is music to my ears, because that means that we're going to continue to see that kind of evolution and development of those type of products. But it's about, what's in your food. So I'm going to leave that a little bit and talk something that's very important to me, and I think it's, I've put up here the vision, purpose, mission, and values. I'll let you read what those are, but it really all comes back to leading a purposeful life. And it doesn't mean just when you leave work, what you do, because work is where you spend most of your awake hours. So it's important to be doing something that you actually believe in, that the people you work with, you share the same values and beliefs. And so for me, these type of things, how these all aspects come together is extremely important. And so I call this kind of like living your values. And the key one up here is the very first one. And that's to be authentic. That's to be really real in what you're doing out there and with the people you work with. And to be able to do that, you have to know who you are. And that's about being vulnerable, being accepting, being present with people, and being useful. And useful is about, not so much about yourself, it's about the other people that you're working with. And so if you're in a leadership role, for me, it was always making sure that they had the tools that they needed to be able to do the work that I was asking them to do. It was whether they had the information that they needed to be able to do it, that I put them in the right type of environment that they could make that happen. That's all part of, for myself, living my values. So when I look at myself and where I am today, these two things up here are really important for how I look at work. First of all, I want to work with people I share the same values and beliefs. I have that opportunity at this stage in my life to always be able to select where I work and who I work with. But I'm always looking at making sure that I'm with people that I have share the same values and beliefs. I get a lot more done when I'm able to do that. So these are my keys to my success. First is to walk your talk. So many people out there, they talk about what they're doing, but they go and do other things in their life on a day-to-day basis. So that doesn't really work. That doesn't really talk about you're not really being true to yourself when you do that. So for me, I have to always be walking my talk. Whatever my dream is, I've got to be doing that. If it's about doing something in a sustainable way, I need to be doing that myself before I tell other people to do it. The golden rule, treat others as you like to be treated. These all make sense. None of these up here are hard things to do when you look up here, but that they're key things in the way that we work with one another. Listening to the customers and watching what they do. Is the packaging right? Is it put in the right place? Is it the product in the right size? Is it really serving the needs of the customers and when we talk about it? So that's what listening to the customers. Gross margin, I've always focused on gross margin. If I was in a business school class, I could spend a half hour or a whole lecture on gross margin and the importance of it. But it's really key. Whatever you do, at least in my world, we had to make sure that what it cost and what we sold it for, that's the difference between the cost and what we sold it for is the gross margin. And that's what allows us to do all the other stuff, to pay our employees, to pay the rent, to be able to grow the business. Staying focused. This is all about avoiding the distractions that we let come into our life, particularly when you're a young company, if you're an entrepreneur and you're putting something together, and your first product is 2 or 3 different versions of that product, whether it's color or ingredients or whatever, or flavors. But so often I see people, they have their initial product out there and they get distracted and start looking at, okay, well now we're going to make it in this size, we're going to do this and that, and they're not, and they lose focus on the thing that's actually driving their business. It's the same way in our own lives that can happen. If we get too much going on and so on and so forth, we lose focus on the things that are really important in what we do. So for me, it's to stay focused, be a finisher. Self-knowledge, know who you are, we chatted a little bit about that. And pick them right. If you're in a leadership role, finding the right people to be able to work with you to get things done. So I've put these up here. I'm always out there trying to find high performers. It's not hard to do when you come to the University of Michigan to find high performers. I'm kind of staring out at an audience full of high performers. But these are the things that I look for when I'm evaluating people and interviewing people up here. Obviously being ambitious and being, ready to go. Let's go out and get these things done. Being a winner. So I look at people who have been in some kind of competition. Could be on the debate team, it could be in chess, doesn't have to be an athlete out there, but or could be at in a music competition, whatever it is. Because there's just something about that kind of competitive nature for people out there. It means you have to concentrate on things, you have to be focused, and so I'm always looking for winners. Sociable. This world is all about having relationships with people, okay? So if you're not sociable, it's difficult to be, to get people to work with you. Listeners, we just talked about that. This is all about, for me, customers, listening to the customers, listening to what's going on in the environment, what's going on in the world out there in your community, and being able to then take that and understand what the problems are and find the solution. Persistent. This is self-explanatory when I'm looking out at this audience out here, okay? You're here today because, you know, you are hard workers and you got into the university because of the work that you've done in the past. Having a vision, being a dreamer, thinking about what's really possible out there in the world is very important. You know, I came into a world where organic and natural was not really existent, and today you can find it in just about every retail food store in the United States and literally around the world today. Persuasive, you got to be able to close the deal, make things happen. Okay, convince people that what you're doing is important, or what you're making is important for them. Loyal, I'm looking for people who are willing to go that extra mile, who are willing to spend the hours to get things done. I look for people that have a big dose of GSD, getting shit done is what I call that. Having high self-esteem and confidence. I'm not talking about overconfidence, but being in yourself, being present, to be able to go out and do things. And then being a risk taker, not being afraid to fail. You saw all the things up there that I've been successful at. I have another page that's got all the things that I failed at, okay? I didn't bring it and put it up there, but I learned an awful lot from that in my life. And then I've got off the canvas, got up and went back and continued to fight and make things happen. So you have to be able to do that. So when I look at people, when I do interviews with people in key positions, or for myself or for other organizations that ask me to come in, these 10 characteristics up here is what I'm looking for. I have a list of 15 questions that I ask people that really don't have any right answers, but they give me an indicator if these folks can be high performers out there. So picking them right is really important. I just wanted to say a couple more things about the sustainable food systems and what's going on out there. How many of you eat organic food on a regular basis? Okay. How many of you have tried Horizon Organic Milk? Okay. Okay. So that's great, because that tells me, about half of you raised your hands on that. Okay, if this was a sample of what was going on in this country, I would be even much more successful than I am today. So that tells me that this is a crew that's interested in what we do with our food and so forth out there. So for my work today is I do mostly coaching, I do mostly mentoring, I do a lot of consulting out there, counseling with young entrepreneurs. And I'm pleased to say that it's really exciting stuff going on out there today in the world out there. But the key element is to be able to stick with it, whatever your idea is, and make it happen out there. Okay.
Thank you, Mark. Thank you.
Thanks, John.
I'm going to start with a hard question. If you could do something differently, looking back in reflection, what would it be?
If I could do something different. Mm-hmm. Well, There's not a lot that I would do different in my experiences out there, because I really enjoy the fact that I've had a wealth of experiences with many different companies and met hundreds and hundreds or thousands and thousands of different people, and have traveled all over the world and doing things. If I could do something different, it would probably be having a more profound impact on with our leaders in government to bring about change. I was a lobbyist for the first year for the organic food industry to get the Organic Food Production Act passed, and then trying to get the law and rules all promulgated and so on, so that we had a set of guidelines on what we had to do. But it's so challenging working in Washington, D.C. in the government to bring about change. It's kind of set up not to accept change, okay? And in today's world, we've got to find ways to bring about those kind of changes, and we have to get people in our governments to be aware of the need for that, particularly with big issues like climate change and so on and so forth that we're seeing out there. My hope is that you out in this audience are the ones who are going to be important in making that change by finding the right people. So if I could do more, it would be doing more on that side.
Thank you. What do you want to see changed? Like, what would be your top 3 things?
Well, let's take carbon sequestration. It's been clearly shown in many, many studies that if we use regenerative or conservation type of ag, sustainable ag out there, we did cover crops, we did no-till, we did a lot of certain rotations, that we can sequester the carbon that's out there. How do you think the rainforests get fertility? It comes from carbon being sequestered through those plants into the soil. So, these are things that are right in front of us. There's solutions right there that we just don't want to look at. So we've industrialized agriculture to the point where, we're taking all that, we're taking the positive stuff in the soil, and it's running down the rivers and streams into the oceans. If we had cover crops, that wouldn't be happening. The crops would be, the soil wouldn't be, we won't be losing soil at the rate that we're doing today. So for me, they sound like simple solutions, but we don't actually look at that. We get caught into the way we've looked at industrialization, and we just don't look at what's really right in front of us, how nature is doing it.
Right. And we take a lot for granted.
Excuse me?
We take a lot for granted.
Yes, we do, definitely.
So I have a question. So you talked a lot about change and creating change. What do you think the catalyst for change will be? Do you think it will be consumers or government or companies? Who do you think will create that change or has the best chance of doing that?
Consumers. You vote with your dollars, okay? If you demand products to be made a certain way, okay, then the good business people out there will make those products because that's what the consumers are demanding out there. So, I said earlier that, I started the Horizon Dairy after I had all these consumers coming to me and say, why can't we get any organic dairy? So we went out and figured out how we could do it. And today we've changed that dairy industry. The same thing with this palm oil. We're changing the way palm oil can be done. And we're now finding the big CPG companies like Unilever and Nestle and so forth coming to us and saying, hey, we use lots and lots of palm oil, and we have consumers telling us that they don't want us to be using palm oil, but we need to for the certain products we're making. Can we get some of your palm oil? Okay, well, that'll eventually bring about the change in how palm oil is made out there. So consumers, everybody here is, in your demand for those type of products, we bring about change.
Are there any other ways that us as students can influence, like promoting sustainable practices besides just with our dollar?
You can get engaged, okay? I mean, you can be involved. There's many organizations on this campus that you can be involved in on that. You can demand of the administrators here that we get to a zero carbon impact on this campus, okay? You know, you provide somewhere 7 to 10% of all the revenue that comes in through your tuition. So you should have a right to be able to talk to them about how this campus is being operated from an operation. Not so much about the academics, but about how the campus is operated. Because it's the world that you're living in here while you're on campus. And if you want it to be more sustainable, then make sure you tell the administrators and the other students to get together and have that happen.
Anyway, I worked on a campus previously where it was zero food waste in the cafeteria. You know, and the students were really encouraged, take what you're going to eat. You can come back through the line, but take what you're going to truly eat.
Right.
And don't throw the food away.
Well, you know, I think I have another example similar to that. I went to, a few years ago, I was visiting with Keith Soster, who is the head of sustainability for food and dining. And the food and dining had finally realized that the students were their customer, okay? And if the students were demanding a certain type of food or certain types of products, and they're paying for it, why aren't we delivering it to them? That's not how we do it in the real world out there. If there's demand, the retailers provide it, or the restaurants would provide that for that demand, but we're not doing that here. So that's a system that we can change here on this campus.
Right. Well, and even like portion sizes. I mean, you think about health, you know, and just as a society, how many things can be impacted as we think about, you know, our food sources and our sustainability, and this is our one planet.
Yeah, right. You know, portion sizes are really important on that.
Why do you think there hasn't been a major push towards sustainability? Do you think it's a lack of education, or do you think it's because people don't see the immediate repercussions?
Oh, I think we're all living in a world where we're seeing the repercussions of sustainability. Well, I think you just have to travel a little bit to be able to understand what's really going on. I've spent a lot of time in developing countries and third world countries, and you begin realizing that, you know, why do I have all this stuff and these people here don't have anything? So you have a different perspective on stuff, and you think about that. You start thinking about food waste. And the fact that we produce enough food to feed everybody on the planet, but we don't get it to them. And, you know, I mean, we're smart enough to be able to do the logistics, to be able to get food to people. Why aren't we doing it? Where's the will for that to happen? And so a lot of it is just that. Where's the will to bring about the change? That's why I'm encouraged by being here on campus and seeing young people that are involved in doing things, because that's what brings about the change. By being involved and trying to get things done. It'll happen.
Backstage, you were sharing with us, you consider yourself a serial entrepreneur. Thinking back over your career trajectory, your teams, how did you go from venture to venture? Tell us a little bit about your teams.
My teams?
Your teams.
Oh, my teams.
Your teams with
I thought you were trying to talk about my age here.
Oh, no.
Okay.
No, because we're not going to talk about mine either.
Okay, teams. Really, really
Teams.
important. Thank you for bringing up that question. Okay. To me, it's all about, you know, I put up the 10 attributes that I look for high performers, but that's one thing. That's how to pick them. You know, it's how to work with them to get things done, which is the next stage and just as important, if not more important. First of all, it's about trust, respect, honoring people, okay? Making sure that that's about authentic leadership, being authentic in what you do. And making sure that, you have these people because, they're there to do a task with you or to get things done and so on and so forth. So let's make sure they have the tools. Let's make sure that they know what they have to do. They get the right type of direction, okay? And that, for me, as a leader, it's always been a lot of coaching along the way. And being involved and being present with people, being engaged. And finally, I think that in businesses, it's about understanding that that's a type of community that we are in. And today things are changing so rapidly that as a species, we're not capable of adapting as fast as things are changing. And I think that what that means is that when I grew up, there was a lot more community. There was neighborhoods and that people were in, and all sorts of things where people were always coming together. Today, I think we need community again because of the change that's happening so out there for us and our ability to adapt. It's much easier to adapt when you're with another group and you're doing it together and you've got more data points and so on and so forth to be able to understand where you can go and do things. But it actually comes down to our humanity as well, and having a relationship with people that is meaningful. So, I said earlier, treating people the way you would like to be treated. Okay, so I'm always conscious of that. Maybe I'm sometimes too empathetic, but I find that I'd rather be too than not empathetic, than less empathetic in that way. So
well, that coaching theme, other speakers have cited that you just really feel like you're following your passion, but you're also coaching those around you to build that up and follow you.
Yeah. Because you need them. They're bringing skill sets, they're bringing ears and eyes and senses that are bringing stuff so that you want to be able to get all of that so that when you're making your decisions and doing your things, it's all being considered.
Okay, I want to throw it out into the audience. I know some of us in here in the discussion section at least prepared questions. Matt is roving with the microphone today. Who wants to jump in? Again, it helps us. How many C students?
Here. Quick question. Organic foods are typically defined as non-GMO. What is your stance on genetically modified organisms and why?
Well, in the definition of organic, in the Organic Food Production Act, GMOs are not allowed in organic foods. So that should pretty much tell you what my answer is about what I think about GMOs. Nature, GMOs for me are messing with nature. And, when I look at, and we particularly see, I'm not going to, GMOs used in medicine that are something that we can all benefit from. Okay, that's not what I'm talking about. I'm going to talk just about GMOs in food here. I find that I'm not really seeing any benefit of GMOs out there. I know that we can feed the world with what we're growing today. We don't need GMOs to feed the world. That is a sham out there. Okay, we have really great agricultural practices that if we put them in place, the United Nations has said if we went to organic and sustainable agriculture out there in the third world and the developing world, they could feed themselves. Okay, so GMOs, when we take things like glyphosate, Roundup, and you know, you can do the same thing by taking your plow out and doing a little plowing, burning some of the weeds, all sorts of, you know, non-invasive and non-GMO ways of doing these type of things. So to me, it's the easy way out. It's not the way that's in tune with nature. And Mother Nature, from what we're seeing in the world today, is reacting to things that we've been doing over the last 100 years on this planet. And she's not happy. We can see that. Whether it's climate change, whether it's degradation we see in other environmental things, whether it's the mistrust in our food supply that we have out there. So I think GMOs are just a crutch, realistically.
So we have a question up here.
Yeah, let me see if I can frame this correctly. You started to talk about that like fundamental tension between business and the environment, like production and resources in the developing world. How do you how can we square being entrepreneurs and business people with being environmentalists, given that deal that you have to consume resources to make business happen, and the resources aren't coming from our communities usually?
I need a little bit more clarity on that question.
All right, as a business person, thinking about production and anytime you're producing a product, you're consuming resources, right? Mm-hmm. You're using resources. How do you square being a business person with the consumption, or how can we square being business people with the consumption of resources that is usually not local to us? It's usually happening elsewhere, in the developing world, as you were saying.
Okay, I see what we're getting at here. Well, I could tell you that I'd like everything to go back to be local and, that type of stuff, but I know that's not reasonable. I mean, the palm oil is only grown on 10 degrees north or south of the equator is where that type of palm can be grown. So if you're going to use palm oil, you're going to have to transport it, so to here or to wherever it's going to be used. That's okay if that transportation is done the right way. I mean, we kind of live in a flat world today. It's not like when I was younger, we didn't think about those things, or we didn't. It was today, though, the world, our demand is for things from all over the world. Where are we going to get cocoa from? We don't grow it in the United States. We don't grow coffee in the United States. We don't grow tea in the United States. So if we're going to enjoy those products, we have to find ways to bring them and get them here in a sustainable manner. And so I'm kind of looking for you out there to solve that type of problem on how we can do it more sustainable than we're doing it today. And so as an entrepreneur, I was looking at those type of problems out there and trying to find solutions to that. And so we're actually seeing some of those type of solutions. I mean, the type of beverages that you can get in the alternatives to coffee or to tea, for example, that are out there, energy drinks and so on and so forth. But the reality is that if we do it in a sustainable manner, in the transportation in that sense, or if it's in the way we grow things, or if it's the way we, how we, today, to me, a big dilemma on this is what's going to happen with the fact that we're growing more and more to buying things off the internet. So there's a lot of consequences to that. What happens to the stores that we used to go into, or actually we're also a place of community where we see people in our community, we talk to them, we support those businesses and so on and so forth. Okay, that makes your community more alive and have and jobs in your community as well. But if we're only buying off of Amazon, and Amazon's, controlling so much of our life, then we don't have those places of community and so on and so forth. We're actually living in a world of convenience. And it gets to a point where we convenience ourselves out of having a really meaningful, purposeful life. So, those are kind of philosophical ways that I've kind of had to look at things. So I don't know if that really answers your question. That's kind of just my perspective on things.
But in terms of businesses, I mean, you're affiliated with brand names that the students know. I mean, Horizon Organic Milk, Rudy's Bakery. I mean, these are items that we see. I know they're for sale over here at Hugo's, Eden Foods. Not that, again, those have become almost commonplace to some of us, just as consumers. The business side of things for you, in terms of matching that resolve with the philosophical answer you're now giving, you started some pretty incredible businesses. I want to hear more about those a little bit.
Okay, so
Yeah.
I live in a kind of in my world, it's not how large it is, it's how you make it large.
Wow.
Okay. So when we started another dairy company after I retired from Horizon, I also realized at that time that 80% of all milk sold in the United States is sold as a private label milk, store brands. Like if you go into Costco, it's Kirkland is their brand. If you go into Kroger, their brand for organic foods is Simple Truth. So what we did is that I started a company with my partner called Aurora Organic Dairy, and we wanted to make organic private label milk, store brand milk. And because at that time only 3% of organic milk was being sold as store brands, but 80% of conventional milk was stored. So we started this company. To be able to do that, we had to be able to, our price, the retailers want to sell their private brand, their store brand, at about 10%, at least 10% less than the leading brand that's in the store. So what we decided was, okay, that means to be able to do that, we have to be vertically integrated. So when we started Aurora Dairy, that meant that we had to grow our own feed, we had to have all of our own cows, we had to have our own processing, we had to do our own distribution, and at each one of those points, we were capturing some margin dollars, which allowed us, when we sold it to the retailers, to sell it so that they could sell it for 10% less. Aurora is a very successful company. We sell, well then our tagline, let me step back, our tagline, and the reason we were doing this is to make organic dairy products accessible and affordable to mainstream America. And so we felt that had to be done by doing the private label milk, and we've been right. I mean, we sell organic milk, all the organic milk that Costco sells, all the organic milk that Target, Walmart, Safeway, Publix, just you name it. We sell them all their organic milk. And we've put together, and we actually have had the University of Michigan's group of students from the School for Environment and Sustainability, at that time it was SNRE, but they came out and did a 3-year study with us and helped us put together our corporate sustainability report. We've done 3 of them in that company. We do them every other year because it takes about a year to get the data, and then it takes another year to put together a report. But our last report, our corporate, we call it our corporate citizens report rather than sustainability report, but that report won the global award for the best corporate citizens report or corporate sustainability report, because we're doing all these things at the same time in that. And so you got to be really conscious about how you put things together and how you structure them to be, to do it the right way. And we've been very successful at that. And the amount of organic milk that's available in mainstream America is significant.
Right. Your philosophical passions and how to make it large, I mean, I've got this in a big box in my notes right now, are commendable. We want to thank you for your time with us on stage today. There's never enough time. We'll continue the conversation and discussion section.
Okay. Thank you.
Phenomenal.
That went fast.
It always does. Oh, where are you? You can turn this off.
I can take that from you. Thank you so much.
Tough question.
I'm really interested in sustainability.
This is tough, right? She does look